right, it is 5:30, so I will call this regular meeting to order. If everyone will please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dr. Aguilar, do you have any comments?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. November 6 through 10 was Media Literacy Week in the United States, and we wish to thank AOC for their assistance. Media Literacy Week highlights the importance of teaching children and teens digital and media literacy skills to ensure their interactions with media are positive and enriching. Thank you to AOC and the following schools for participating in celebrating and raising awareness for Media Literacy Week. Lessons were delivered to over 350 students at the following schools: Myrtle Place, Woodvale, Westside, Ridge Elementary, Live Oak, Edgar Martin Middle, Scott Middle, Karen Crow Middle, and Paulboro Middle School. On November 17th, the J. Wallace James and Ridge Elementary students had the pleasure of Mrs. George Rodrigue being on their campuses. She met with the staff and read to students. As part of her statewide tour, Wendy Rodrigue unveiled a special George Rodrigue self-portrait and displayed some artwork from her personal collection. The visits were in conjunction with the George Rodrigue Foundation of the Arts and Louisiana A+ schools. Congratulations to 4 of our LPSS high school students for winning first place in the Congressional App Challenge. On November 29th, Congressman Clay Higgins announced that David Colley and Deonta Trim of Karen Crow High School, Jeremiah Willis of Acadian High, and Marjorie Hooper of David Thibodeau STEM Magnet Academy won with an app titled Rescue Me, which helps connect volunteers with victims in the wake of a natural disaster. More than a dozen students participated in this year's competition, which was open to all K-12 students in Louisiana's 3rd District. The winning team was selected by a panel of expert judges, including computer science and software professionals from McNeese State University, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and Wader's software development team. Congressman Higgins stated, all the students who participated in this year's challenge showcased impressive computer skills as well as creativity. The high level of participation is a strong testament to the success of science and technology programs at many of our local schools. I want to congratulate David, Deonta, Jeremiah, and Marjorie for their winning app. In South Louisiana, we've seen firsthand with civilian rescue efforts how social media and technology can aid disaster recovery. This app really embodies those principles and has the potential to make a significant impact on bringing communities together after a disaster. Congratulations to Tracy Oquan with the Lafayette Parish School System's Gear Up program for partnering with New Vision Leadership Foundation of Acadiana and the staff at CGI. Congressman Higgins will recognize the participating students and their families during a reception at CGI's Lafayette Center on December 18. On November 30th, Ove Como High School's Navy Junior ROTs participated in an inspection and drill by visiting Commander Merlin Ladner and Area 8 Manager. The event took place at Como's Gymnasium and included the presentation of colors, personnel inspection, NS1 unarmed drill team demonstration, awards and remarks from Commander Ladner. Congratulations to the instructors, Major Lionel Blackman and IT1 Charles Young, to the cadets, Principal Zeno, on an excellent performance. Congratulations also to 3 Acadian Middle School students who bowled themselves to first place. Maya Landry, Zach Broussard, and Jalen Senegal were first place winners at a Special Olympics bowling tournament. Many thanks to their teacher Raymond Roebuck for preparing the students for this competition. 548 LPSS teachers were pinned on December 6th as part of the Lafayette Education Foundation Teacher Awards. The 16 finalists will be recognized at the LEF Awards on January 18 at the Hyman Performing Arts Centers. The LPS finalists for the 4 categories are Elementary School, Becky Cade, J. Wallace James, Catherine Bweck, J.W. Falk, and Courtney Vincent Broadmoor. Middle school winners were Carl Como, Edgar Martin, Lizette Henderson, Paul Bro, and the high school, John Broussard from Acadiana, Nicholas Crater from Lafayette High, Philip Ryland from Acadiana, and Jacob Simon from Como. And in the inspirational category, Dana Rivera from Broadmoor and Chad Viatar from the LPSS Talented Program. On December 7th, one LPSS teacher received an award of a lifetime. Math teacher Angie Boxey from Edgar Martin Middle School was totally surprised to learn that she was the recipient of the Milken Educator Award. The award is given to an outstanding educator that is selected through a confidential process and reviewed by a blue ribbon panel appointed by the State Department of Education. The recommendations are then approved by the Milken Family Foundation. This award recognizes that an educator has effective instructional practices with positive learning results and exemplary educational accomplishments beyond the classroom. The award included a monetary check in the amount of $25,000 of unrestricted funds for Ms. Boxey. Congratulations to Angela, Edgar Martin teacher and Milken Educator Award recipient. On Saturday, December 9, LPSS hosted the District Social Studies Fair for students in 4th through high school at David Thibodeau STEM Magnet Academy. Several students participated in the event, with a total of 32 students who placed first, second, or third and are eligible to participate at the regional competition at ULL in February. Monday, December 11, LDOE staff members Brooke Mopus and Carla Trahan visited Broussard Middle School regarding Leader in Me. Franklin Covey's trainer, Becky Kramer, was present with lots of compliments. The visit included learning about the digital leadership notebooks and how Leader in Me transformed classroom instructions. Congratulations also to the Acadiana High School Wrecking Rams football team. They finished one play short of the finals in 5A championship game. They competed against Hahnville. The score at the end was 43-42. So I want to extend a congratulations to the Rams and a reminder to the board members that we have a ribbon cutting ceremony tomorrow afternoon at Leo Judy's at 1:30. Please try to make it there. It's a big day for Leo Judy's. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. And Mr. Lashley had something to say?
Yes, thank you for allowing me the microphone here. I know we've just honored a lot of our students of the year. Congratulations to all of them, and I'm sure we'll be honoring them in April or May at our award ceremony at the end of the year. But I promised a little buddy of mine, a proud daddy and grandfather, gave me a phone call. Colby Cormier from Ridge Elementary was voted Student of the Year. And that's a really big accomplishment, and I just wanted to give him a shout out and tell him congratulations, how very proud we are of him. And I know Dr. Aguilar's already mentioned it, but to Coach Ted Davidson and our Wrecking Rams, overtime, 1 point and a half of football is all that stopped you from getting to the Superdome. Very proud of you. They lost on Friday night. Monday morning, they were back at it because champions are built in the off season, not during the season. So expect Acadiana to be back, and congratulations, Coach Davidson.
All right, Human Resources, Ms. Thibodeau?
Madam President.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Craig?
I'm sorry. The personnel changes are attached. There's no introductions tonight.
All right. Then at this point, I'll read through the consent agenda, and we'll pull the items for discussion and otherwise vote. 3.1, approval of language learner instructional coach job description. 3.2, approval to amend the 2016-17 Lafayette Parish pupil progression plan to reflect changes to the final grade calculations for U.S. history. 3.3, proposed projects for fundraising matching program. I'm going to pull that one. 3.4, approval of increase to HVAC maintenance contract.
You pull that one.
3.5, approval of Como High Performing Arts Academy building guaranteed maximum price. 3.6, budget revision to the million project listing.
You pull that one.
3.7, budget revisions for project additions for the million projects listing. 3.8, commitment of unassigned fund balance.
I apologize, Madam President. Will you pull 3.7?
Okay. 3.8, commitment of unassigned fund balances. 3.9, revision to policy file DCF fund balances.
Madam President, could I ask that that be pulled for clarification?
3.10, Resolution 12-17-1920, final approval of the issuance of sales tax revenue bonds.
Pull that, please.
3.11, sales tax collection report for October. 3.12, grant fund summary, November 2017. 3.13, budget to actual reports, November 17. 3.14, proposed changes to policy file JS, student fees, fines, and charges. 3.15, approved bid award, sewer jetter machine bid. 3.16, intergovernmental agreement with the City of Scott.
I'll pull that one.
3.17, Southside High custodians. 3.18, eliminate policy GCI evaluation plan for educational support personnel. 3.19, revisions to policy CGPI Lafayette Parish School System Coordinated School Health Wellness Policy. 3.20, revisions to policy JBCCB Magnet Academies. 3.21, adoption of policy GBRC staff schedules. 3.22, revisions to policy GBM personnel transfer. 3.23, revisions to policy GBRIB sick leave.
Madam President, I'd like to request that that item be removed from tonight's agenda. There is some more oversight that needs to take place between risk management and our board attorneys.
Okay. Any objection to that matter being pulled from tonight's agenda? All right. All right. 3.24, Resolution 12-17-1919, Employee Special Counsel. 3.25, Summer Work Schedule. 3.26, approval of 8 additional appeal positions. 3.27, approval of minutes.
Madam President, I move that we approve all items not pulled.
Second.
All right. Any questions or discussions from members of the public on any of those items not pulled? Okay, from members of the board? Then, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. No.
Let's both call him, see who he answers first. Like Rick Mary's calling you, what you got? I don't know him as well as she does.
8 for, none against.
All right, the first item pulled was 3.3, proposed projects for fundraising matching program.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve all projects to be funded.
Second.
All right, any discussions from members of the public? Members of the board? I pulled it so that we could do a separate vote on it. All right, if there's no discussion, I'll call, okay, Dr. Shassel.
My question is, for some of the items, there's two separate categories, and I just wanted clarification for in the future whenever it happens to be that one of my district schools comes and asks questions about it. If there's a number in the funds available category, that means that money is readily available, and if there's no number, then they're still raising the money, yet they still requested it?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions, I'll call for the vote.
Seven for, one against.
Okay, the next item pulled is 3.4, approval to increase HVAC maintenance contract, and that was Dr. Shassel that pulled it.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion to postpone this particular item to the next meeting.
Second.
All right. Any questions or comments from the public? From the board? All right.
Yes, sir. I'd like to look at the original contract. I'd like to see if there's language in there that basically lends itself to what they're requesting. So I need time to look at the original contract.
All right. If there are no further questions, I'll call for the vote on postponing this item to a future meeting.
Eight for, none against.
All right, the next item pulled was 3.6, the budget revision. That was you, Dr. Shassel? No, this one was Timmy, and then the next one was Justin.
Yes, ma'am. Quick question for staff. This may not be the correct item, but my question is, before we spend any extra money on covered playgrounds, which I am in support of. I want to know where it stands with the addition of Boucher's extension to the cafeteria that they needed. Because I wouldn't want to approve any outside play areas before we take care of indoor structures.
So, Dr. Chasson, a subsequent agenda item to be discussed later in the meeting discusses wing expansions to 5 elementary schools. Boucher is on that list, and based on the budget, Dr. Chasson, it's anticipated the cafeteria expansion would fall within the budgeted funds.
Okay. So are we sure? Because when it comes to the individual items, I looked at Boucher's paragraph explanation, and it wasn't in there. So I just want to be sure.
So that's just a generic paragraph to explain that we're going to do everything that we can with the budgeted funds to satisfy first the classroom needs, and then the cafeteria, and then the administrative wing. We won't be able to do everything in that paragraph, but we'll work as carefully as we can to make those improvements.
So how can we be sure that based upon $8 million, the individual architects or whoever's building the particular expansion, that at what point does it reach that $8 million cap? I don't want to spend money for outside covered play areas until I'm sure we can take care of. I know I can't ask you for a reassurance here, but I'm trying to hammer down exactly before I say yeah for covered play areas everywhere.
Can I ask which agenda item it is that talks about the covered walkways, and maybe we can
covered play areas,
the covered playground areas, so that we can maybe defer this discussion.
3.6.
3.6. Oh, this is the one that has the covered playground areas. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought they had been separated out.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and get a motion before we continue.
Madam President, I move the board approves the addition of the proposed projects.
Second.
Okay. And then, does anyone from the public have any comments on this particular item? All right.
May I modify my motion? I was on the wrong agenda item.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I think it has to be a little more specific than that. The board approves a budget revision to the 2016 construction fund to reflect a decrease to the air conditioning of 18 gyms budget line item in the amount of $2.665 million, and an increase to reflect a new budget line item for covered play areas, elementary schools, in the amount of $2,254,000, and an increase to reflect a new budget line item for LaRosian HVAC Gymnasium in the amount of $402,500.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All right, Dr. Chasson.
Help me out here, Doc. I need your help. What was the order with which we're going to do wing expansion, cafeteria, then administrative offices? Is that the order with which you see it coming?
So on those 5 elementary campuses, we will concentrate on eliminating the temporary buildings. That's priority number 1. In that proposed wing to be added to those elementary schools, we would address the necessary bathroom facilities needed.
Okay.
And then finally, with the money that's remaining in that allocation for that school, we will address what can be rehabilitated. In the case of Boucher, the next obvious improvement would be expanding the cafeteria because of the nature of the building. And with any monies left, we would address point of entry, security, and then finally we would address improvements maybe to the library or the administrative wings as we use up the monies.
Right, I got you. Question. The individual breakdown of what we propose it may cost, do we have that? To get us to the $8 million, if we guesstimate it, hey, it's $8 million, then...
We had a budget numbered. So what we did to establish the budget was calculate the number of temporary classrooms times $285,000 per temporary classroom.
Okay.
In the case of Boucher, that gets you to $8 million. Dr. Chasson, we're looking at construction cost in the neighborhood of about $185 a square foot. When you add all of the contingencies and professional fees, it makes the total package roughly about $210 a square foot. That's the kind of wing expansion we're proposing to add on to those campuses. And with those budget numbers, we will be able to accomplish priority number 1, eliminate the temporary buildings. Each one of those campuses would probably have anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 or more dollars available for additional improvements.
Okay. So that's all we're speculating is 250 to 500 left over, possibly?
Dr. Chasson, every one of them will be slightly different
Right.
based on circumstances, but they should have some funds available for other improvements.
Okay. What's the proposed cost of the cafeteria expansion?
You know, I had a rough number, Dr. Chasson. I don't have it available today, right now to tell you, but it was well within the funds that we anticipated as being available.
Okay. So now my question is, even at the highest max of $500,000 left over, we're speculating that the cafeteria expansion, let's say even $1 million, that it will be within that?
Yes, sir.
Do you happen to know where that individual number is? Is it on a piece of paper in your office? Is it around? Does Billy know it? Because I can free up the money now before I pay for covered playgrounds.
Mr. Santani.
I don't want to interrupt. You may want to consider foregoing purchasing the land across the street from STEM, which is $1.3 million, and moving that to the contingency line,
Right.
and designating that as a cafeteria money in case we can't get everything done on one of the particular campuses. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, that's option 4 on my list.
Yeah.
Well, because that property is not even available for sale right now, technically, so.
Right.
Speculation. All right. Dr. Chassaw, you have one?
I'm done.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the motion on 3.6? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. Go ahead, Dr. Chassaw.
Could I get that possible number of what it would cost? Because I'd like to try and carve out that amount of money to be sure that that cafeteria gets taken care of no matter what, because those kids are going to lunch in shifts over there. It's just how many kids we have over there because the school is becoming more and more popular.
Yes, sir. So with the indulgence of the board, because this is a separate agenda item, in the listing of projects to be completed, the 5 wings and the land purchases, there's a line item that says $2 million in reserve. Dr. Chasson, I believe we have enough money available to guarantee that the cafeteria improvements will occur at Boucher.
Eight for, none against.
All right, the next agenda item pulled was 3.7, the budget revisions for project additions. That was you, Mr. Santani.
Yes, Madam President, I move that the board approves the addition of the proposed projects as per the attached listing to the 138 to 14X million projects listing. Authorizes the board president and superintendent to negotiate purchase agreements for the land and office acquisition projects and approves submissions of requests. Approves awards for architect services and other professional services as needed.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments from members of the public on this item? From members of the board?
This would be the time. So the motion says to authorize the purchase of the land across from STEM. If you would prefer to put that, I would certainly not be opposed to moving that to the contingency line item, because there are, maybe the cafeteria costs at the other schools don't fit within the budget as well. So,
So you want to make a substitute motion to move the 1.314 to contingency?
As opposed to making it a substitute motion, would you mind adding into yours, and I'll second yours?
that's fine. I'll change mine. Approves the proposed projects as per the attached listing, with the exception of the STEM project and moving the 1.3 $1.4 million to the contingency line item. Is that clear enough, Mr. Guidry?
All right, and Mr. Lashley, you had seconded the original.
I will second it. I will remove my second if Dr. Chasson wants to take my place.
Yeah, second.
All right, so a second by Dr. Chasson. All right. Is there any discussion from the public, from the board members?
Yeah. I'm just wondering if, since the superintendent pretty much assured that the money's there to cover it, the cafeteria, why are we doing this?
I personally would just like to be sure it gets built, because as opposed to property that's not currently available, not for sale, and we know that personally because my family was looking at purchasing this exact same land as well. The fact that I have land that's not available versus a cafeteria that is currently being used, I just really want to be sure this cafeteria gets taken care of.
Mr. Lashley?
I guess along the same lines, if there is funds left over once these projects are completed, will we be able to add any projects? Because I sure got a cafeteria at Scott Middle that needs to be completely refurbished. That, I mean, it's a middle school. I know we're dealing with elementaries here. You know, I've also got one at El Leo Judice that could be, but I think the one at Scott, I'd at least like the option, if there's money left over, for us to look at maybe adding extra projects at the end. Just, and this is not, you know, this is just a FYI.
Mr. Angel?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm going to address this superintendent. Mr. Superintendent, I'm going to vote no for this motion because your word is good enough for me.
All right, and if the motion passes, I think that we'll know a more precise budget number within the next few months. Once we get architects in and plans, we'll have firmer numbers, and we can look at what's in the contingency and move it back for the STEM property possibly, or whatever else is necessary. So, all right, any further comments? All right, then, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Six for, 2 against.
All right, All right, the next item pulled was 3.9, revision to policy file DCF. Mr. Hammonds?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. On the second page of this proposed policy at the very end, there are two sentences which read as follows: this provision may be changed at the discretion of the board with a 2/3 vote. And then the following sentence reads, once the 2.5 months level has been obtained, any excess stabilization funds may be used in the budgeting process for operational needs with a 2/3 vote of the board. Mr. Guidry asked me immediately before the board meeting whether that was 2/3 vote of the total board or 2/3 vote of the board members present and voting, and I gave him my opinion, but then I started thinking as we were sitting here that it should not be necessary for somebody to have to ask a lawyer for interpretation of the policy. So my recommendation would be for you to decide one way or the other. Should that policy read, may be changed at the discretion of the board with a 2/3 vote of the total membership of the board, or a 2/3 vote of the board members present and voting? I think one way or the other, whichever way you go, I think it would add clarification and avoid confusion in the future.
All right. Mr. Hidalgo?
Madam President, I'd like to ask Mr. Hammonds, what was your opinion, number one, and what was your opinion, first of all?
Well, my opinion was if it doesn't say total membership of the board, then 2/3 vote is 2/3 of the members present and voting. And
sure.
So unless if you want it to be 2/3 of the total membership of the board, you need to say 2/3 of the total membership of the board.
So it was always my appreciation that the majority or the 2/3 or whatever is required vote is of the quorum. But in this case, I would absolutely be in favor of 2/3 vote of the full board.
Would you like to make a motion? Would you like to make a motion, Mr. Hidalgo, to amend the proposed policy?
Why don't you tell us how that should read, Mr. Hammond?
It would simply be that you approve the policy as presented with the addition at the conclusion of the policy that it would be 2/3 vote of the total membership of the board.
Just add the word membership to the end of the policy.
There you go.
Okay, and that was seconded by Mr. Angel. Okay. Well, right, if we add that language to the policy, right, Mr. Lashley?
There was discussion. I'd like to add that I can support going from 3 months to 2.5 and freeing this money up for this project. But once this project is done and the bonds have been paid and so forth and so on, that this fund go automatically back to 3 months, that it doesn't stay at 2.5 forever, and that money is available for whatever. It needs to go back to the 3-month excess, which is what it was always intended.
All right, and
Mr. Guidry?
Yeah, these funds would be actually pay as you go. They're non-recurring. So once they're used, they're gone. So rather than be used as debt service because they're non-recurring, they'd be used for pay as you go projects. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
I guess my concern is how many years would it take to pay off the bonds if these were used? If it's 30 years, then I think the board sitting 30 years from now would be the ones to look at the policy at that time, because by then the policy may be completely different. I'm not sure, but well, we're talking about, well, the pay-as-you-go or the different conditions of using these funds, and that's one of the things that Mr. Lashley said, that once everything was paid off under this policy, that it would automatically revert back to 3 months, is what Mr. Lashley is saying.
Right.
So if we're talking 5 years, that's one thing. If it's going to be 30 years before we're finished, then that may be something that just a future board's got to take care of.
But by putting it back, it's like if we would have never changed it, but by putting it back, we put it back where it was, and then we let that board in the future do what they want. But it's been 3 months, and I mean, I know the story of why we have it at 3 months, and I agree with it. And I also agree with going down to 2.5 if we can make some facility improvements and so forth and so on and better our system. But I think what we need to do is make sure it goes back to 3 months so that we don't hamper any future boards. Just put it back where it was when these projects are done.
All right, so do you want to make that as a substitute motion to add on to what's been, or what? All right, Mr. Santani.
I would say that that may be better suited to be a separate agenda item in the future, either through the budget cycle or as an amendment to this policy, because I think we may muddy the water with this right here. Because what the key point is, this isn't going to be money paying off any bonds. This is going to be money that we have in a savings account that we are using to buy something one time. And so the only way to get back to 3 months is to actually figure out a way, if you want to pay it back over 20 years, is to figure out a way to carve out $600,000 a year out of your budget to put back into the stabilization fund. So I would just make that point, that it's a little more, I think, a little more complicated than just.
Like I said, I agree with going to 2.5. I'll support it, but I do want to go back to 3 at some point in time.
Madam President.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Along those lines, Mr. Lanchelay, I guess there will be nothing to put back unless, again, the budget was cut to pay for it to put it back. Right? It's not reoccurring money. It's not money coming in every year that, oh well, at this point in time we stop with these projects and then the money comes in and we put it back. There's nothing to put back. And I, like you, it took a whole lot. It actually took the auditors to Mr. Burton to convince me. It took him quite a while to convince me that 2.5 months was a safe move. And the way he convinced me is because I feel like you, I'm very conservative, and I want to stash away as much as I can. However, we're not supposed to be stashing away taxpayer dollars. We have a huge need in the district, and we're supposed to be using the money. And 2.5 months is the standard. So, as much as it pains me to say it, I'm certainly going to support this. But there's nothing really to put back. You have to create it to put it back. It's not just there.
All right, any further discussion? Any discussion from the public? I don't think I asked.
Madam President, the motion, as I'm reading, it says to change the last sentence only. It's used in 2 different sentences. I'm assuming it would be changed in both sentences, was the intent of the motion as I understood it.
Yes.
So it would be to the last 2 sentences of the policy.
All right, Ms. Dorothy, if you can make that correction, then I'll call for the vote once it's corrected. Yeah, Dr. Chassel.
Mr. Guidry, how long are we looking at overall for this? How long are we looking at as far as if Mr. Latchley would like to move it back to what it currently is? How long are we looking at? Possibly how many years?
Well, basically, when we move it to 2.5 months, that frees up that $11 million. I would, and until that $11 million is spent, I would think it would remain in place to allow that $11 million to be spent. So, it could be something as quick as, well, let's take the $11 million and transfer it to self-funded construction now. And so at that point in time, or shortly thereafter, it could be reinstated. So as soon as those funds are expended or set aside, we could come back and bring it back up to 3 months, and then it would take however long to build back up, just depending on what our surpluses would be, from year to year. So I would think that that's the way we would address it.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I'll call for the vote.
8-4, none against.
All right, the next item pulled is 3.10, Resolution 1217-1920, final approval of the issuance of sales tax revenue bonds. Mr. Centani?
Madam President, I move that the board approve Resolution 12-17-1920 for $61,600,000 of sales tax revenue bonds and authorizing the superintendent to sign the bond purchase agreement that is referenced in such resolution, assuming the parameters of the agreement are satisfied.
Second.
All right. And Mr. Osborne, I know you made a trip out here. If there's anything you want to comment on? Any questions or comments from the public on this item? Any questions or comments from the board while we're okay.
Okay. Thank you for letting me appear before you tonight. This resolution, well, let me start off. Back in May, you gave preliminary approval to the issuance of not exceeding $75 million of bonds and authorized the application of the State Bond Commission for its approval. That application was made and the Bond Commission approved it. So now it's time to provide for the final issuance of the bonds, and this is a following a procedure that is generally used today in this size bond issue for other local governments like yourself. And what this will provide for will be that you'll have prepared for you by my office an official statement, a disclosure document. And that document will be put on the internet, and Mr. Bressler and his firm of Raymond James will distribute it all around the United States and to people who traditionally buy this type of bonds. And then there will be a conference call probably on Friday of a week. This will be around the 1st of January, and you'll have your executive director and chief financial officer on the phone, and superintendent, anybody else that would care to be on the phone. And the underwriter will tell you that group what he expects those bonds to sell for, what interest rate will be required to sell them. And then if the committee agrees, the people on the phone agree, he'll go the next week, probably on Tuesday, they'll go out for offers to purchase those bonds. And then they have a new setup that they use where anybody who wants to follow the sale can do that, follow it on the internet, and purchasers of bonds will then submit offers to purchase the bonds. And after the pricing period or the sale period is through, the underwriter will come back to the school board and will advise them of what interest rates they can sell the bonds. because they've sampled the market and they know what the going rate is. And then if the school board approves that, the superintendent will then be able to sign a bond purchase agreement, which is attached to this resolution, which is here before you. And then that will be like the contract to purchase a house. And then a month later, there will actually be a closing like the closing on a house. Now, the resolution is complete except for the amount of the issue. And I understand it's 61,600,000 is what? 61,600,000. And beg your pardon? Yes. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Okay, and Mr. Bressler here would like to come up and explain his.
All right.
Hello, good evening. I just wanted to, I guess, clarify one thing, is that the 61.6 was the project funding requirement for the issue. And in addition to that, you would have to fund a debt service reserve fund, and in some cases, we're able to sell the bonds at a premium to make that work. My suggestion would be, obviously we're going with that project amount, but the par amount, we may want to give ourselves some latitude in case the market allows you to save money by going with discount bonds instead of premium bonds, where you set the coupons relative to the yield. So if you want to give yourself more flexibility, perhaps you come up with a bigger number for the par amount. Obviously, we're only going to sell the amount that we need to sell to fund your $61,600,000 project fund. But the par amount of the bonds could swing depending on, we're assuming that there will be a release from the reserve fund instead of adding to the reserve fund. But again, that's a tax law issue that, that could change as well. It's really the premium of the bonds, where we're assuming a $5 million premium, and it could disappear or become a discount. So if you all don't mind, to allow for a bigger par amount of the sale, but recognizing that we're restricted to the project fund that you've approved. So maybe 70 million, if that's okay.
Mr. Gidger, would you like, is there any pressing need for us to sell this before our January meeting?
Yes, because we have to prepare for the sale, for the perimeter sale. Again, basically, the pro formas we've looked at would indicate that the 61.6 million would be enough to generate the proceeds that we need. However, as Mr. Bressler mentioned, this is a month down the road, and so just to give us the latitude we need to make sure, the flexibility that we need to make sure that we sell bonds that will, in essence, provide for the 61.6 million for projects and still cover our debt service requirements and our closure costs.
I mean, if you all are more comfortable with 65 million, we could live with that. We just like a little bit of flexibility on the structuring.
Ms. Neasy, can you put the motion up for us to read, please? Yes, sir, Mr. Santani.
Might we recess for 5 minutes and let our staff all agree on a number? Because I don't think anybody wants us deciding on what the number is.
I certainly don't want to decide on the number. All right, yeah, so let's take a short recess for 5 minutes. 5 minutes and 5 minutes only, please.
Good. How are you doing? Stretching it.
Not as young as I used to be.
None of us.
It's literally math. Why do we not come up with a math answer?
We're back. You got it? 65. Yeah.
We got it. Everybody agrees?
Final answers.
All right. We got the number. Got it.
Okay. 1 minute, 40 seconds.
I'm telling you, it would have taken a lot longer if we just kept this.
But I guess, whatever. Considered it.
Practice this more. You need to practice it.
I won't say what Joe said about you tonight, but. Oh, no.
Thank you, Joe. And
All right, Mr. Centani?
Madam President, I amend my motion to remove $61.6 million and insert $65 million.
I maintain my second.
All right. Any further discussion on this item? Then, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. So, Dr. Chasson, are you still thinking about this motion? Okay. All right. You can mark Mr. Angel absent, Ms. Neesey.
Seven for, none against.
All right, the next item pulled. It's 3.16, intergovernmental agreement with City of Scott. Ms. Morrison?
Yes, Madam President. I move that we approve the intergovernment agreement between the City of Scott and Lafayette Parish School Board, Westside Elementary Retention Drainage Facility.
Second.
All right, any discussion from members of the public? All right, from members of the board? Ms. Morrison?
Yes, I would just like to comment that I think this is a great opportunity for the City of Scott and Lafayette Parish School Board to partner in this intergovernment agreement that will benefit Westside and the surrounding areas. It's a great example of maybe some other opportunities we have in the parish to partner with other municipalities, and which works for both us and our municipalities. So thanks and I hope you support this. Thank you.
I'd just like to echo what Ms. Morrison said and thank the City of Scott, the mayor, and the councilwomen for partnering with us in making this happen, especially with everything that's being done to rebuild and reopen West Side. I think this is a big positive, and just like to thank the City of Scott. Thank you.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I'll call for the vote.
Eight for, none against.
All right, the last item pulled is 3.20, revisions to policy JBCCB, Magnet Academies. Mr. Angel.
I would request someone make a motion. I don't want to make a motion that I intend to vote against.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the proposed revisions to policy JBCCB, Magnet Academies.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments from members of the public? All right, from members of the board? Mr. Angel.
Ma'am, I have a concern, and it may be a valid concern, it may not be, but I would like to request of the superintendent and or his staff to gather information relative to those students who live in the zone where the school is. If any of those students have been denied admission to the school as a result of the maxing out, if you will, the population with siblings. Do you understand my question?
Yes, sir. I understand. We'll be happy to provide that.
All right. Thank you. And I would encourage my fellow board members to vote no, just to wait until this comes up again. And let's see if, as some of my fellow board members mentioned, like Mr. Broussard, that, you know, you have students at J. Wallace James who can hear the bell and the announcements, but they can't go to the school. And I know Dr. Chasson said personal instances where his children were denied entry because it was full because of the. And I just want to make sure that we treat both students equally, those who, you know, with siblings and those who live in the zone. Thank you.
Mr. Lashley.
I would like to also maybe get staff and us as board members also, and just citizens in this community, to encourage a lot of families and a lot of students who may not even be applying. And I've heard that you know, we don't apply, we don't know how, so forth and so on. I mean, it's I've spoken with some people. I don't mind helping anyone who wants to apply or needs to go online or needs a opportunity to get online to do it. But I say we reach out, maybe in these schools, send a note home to parents. The lottery is now open. If you would like to attend these schools, please apply. Some parents may not know that the lottery recently opened on Monday. It was supposed to open 2 weeks ago. Let's reach out to the public and let's see what happens when a lot of these students, if more students start applying, what happens, how many more can get in the neighborhoods and the areas surrounding the schools. And that's the one thing I'd like to see. I think if everybody applies, you know, it's kind of like buying a lottery ticket. I haven't won the lottery yet, but I don't buy lottery tickets very often. So maybe if I start buying more, I might win. But let's try to encourage these families to apply.
Mr. Broussard.
Yes, I think some of the language we had before sort of discourage some of the applicants from applying for it. But since we have changed some things in there, we may be more open or more accommodating to some of the students who are wishing and willing to go to the school. I think it's a good idea for us to wait a while to see if we can, I guess, notify the public in the surrounding area that the rules has changed and there's more opportunity now for them to join the magnet academies that we have, not just one, but any one of the magnet academy. And we want to hold true the words of magnet academy while we're growing it. And this is my thought on it.
Mr. Hidalgo.
I'd like to echo Mr. Lachele. I do believe that we need more and more people to apply, and it's incumbent upon them to, you know, find out the criteria. Aside from us not promoting it enough, and I think the district has done a great job in past years to promote our academies. Aside from that, I think, you know, it's kind of their own fault, their own risk if they don't apply. But I do want to say that it is not like buying a lottery ticket. The word priority, the meaning of the word priority is what it is. These students, in some cases, possibly prevent someone who's applying from getting in. It's not a matter of it's not like buying a lottery ticket. The sibling priority disallows more applicants in. Now, if we're not getting as many applicants as there are available seats, well, no problem. Asking more folks to apply is not going to make this problem better. It could potentially make it worse if there's no cap. But I agree, we need more applicants. And to say, well, we're not going to apply because we don't have a shot to get in, that's not a good excuse. You certainly don't have a shot to get in if you don't apply. Thank you.
Ms. Morrison.
Okay, this year we're starting with assistance on completing the application. Like if someone goes to the school and they'll walk up to the desk and say, I need assistance filling out the application, there will always be someone to assist them. And we're implementing that this year, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. We've got computers in the Academy office available for parents to use. And just as an FYI, the lottery's been open for 3 days. And today, at the end of the day, we had 1,200 applicants that have completed the application online. We will continue to work with parents. They're welcome to come to the central office. They're welcome to go to any of the academy schools, and someone will help them fill out the application.
Ms. Samet.
I just want to reiterate, all the principals for the magnet academies, we met recently this week, and they were all requested, asked any issues with anyone from any school coming to your school to use a computer to apply. They were all, hey, doesn't matter if they're zoned for us or not. If someone shows up, wants to apply, we'll accommodate them. So I also want to say that for our K-8 students, before Christmas, I'll be sure that at least a half-page flyer is going home with every child, informing the families that the Magnet Academy's applications are open and the web address for them to go on to apply. I'll take care of that.
Ms. Morrison.
The percentage of sibling priority, is it about 30%? Is that correct overall? 30 to 35%? I'm not sure where I got that number from, but do we have a number of total
So we think, just without anything in front of us, it's in that 30 to 35% range.
Dr. Shassel.
I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item until staff provides the requested information. Substitute motion.
All right, so any comments on the substitute motion to postpone this item until further information is provided? Dr. Aguilar?
So just to be clear, we will be providing you with historical information. This will be last year's data that we can provide to you.
I would ask that you go back about 5 years so we can see the trend over the last 5 years, and of course targeted to the particular program, so we know the difference in the different schools.
Yes, ma'am.
And since you're going to be gathering data, I'd like to request some additional data. Based on my own personal research, sibling priority, especially when it's standalone, the only priority used is not common practice in school districts. I could be wrong because my research is based on the internet, and the issue of priority generally comes up in the context of desegregation cases or in unitary status. And what I could find online was that when sibling priority does exist, and I think, and I'm not certain, that some of this is based on guidelines provided by the Department of Education or Office of Civil Rights. Okay, this is just my unofficial or informal research. But that when sibling priority does apply, it's basically a catch-all provision where when it's used, it is for remaining seats that are not filled following a proximity priority and a totally, completely, 100% random lottery. After those events take place, then the seats that remain are open for sibling priority. So I would like to see if there are any other school districts in, 1, Louisiana, and 2, anywhere else, if it's not a common practice in Louisiana, that use sibling priority exclusively with no other priorities or in conjunction with other priorities. I know it's a hard task, but we're being asked to adopt a policy, and based on the language tonight, with absolutely no caps or limitations, and we don't even know if this is a standard practice for school districts. I'm not sure that anybody with the staff has called the Office of Civil Rights or anything else to make sure that this is something that we can do without red flags being raised. And so I have a lot of concerns. I've expressed my opinion about this particular policy several times. So if you're collecting data, I'm going to ask that your staff provide that data as well. And then once I get a list of the school districts that's provided, I'm going to do my independent research as well, just to confirm that if there are districts who are using sibling priority with nothing else, I'd like to find out the context that they're using that in. All right, thank you. All right, if there are no further questions or comments, Mr. Broussard.
Ms. Samick, if you know offhand, what's the magnet student population? I know you say you got 1,200 applicants, that's total. But do we know offhand what's the student population for the Magnet Academies?
And I have to tell you, it's been 2 months since I've looked at that. I do not know. I'm sorry.
Okay. You have a rough guess of last year's count? Just throw a number near.
No, I really can't.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Shessa.
Yes, ma'am. Right along with President Morris's request to bookend desegregation and unitary status, somewhere in there, and I'm not even sure if Judge Hike was the one that mentioned it, but what she touched upon was the proximity priority, if that's in any of the paperwork. Now, granted, we've achieved unitary status. We're not under that. However, I'd still like to look at if one of the major bullet points that was listed in any of that paperwork stated proximity priority, because I've heard it from a number of people.
I will tell you that I personally reviewed the pleadings in the federal court matter on the desegregation case, and there is very specific wording about proximity with regards to J. Wallace James in particular.
Right.
It's not for El Leo, because El Leo was envisioned and originally conceived as a Montessori school, and I don't know why it converted from a Montessori school to the current configuration. So as a 100% school of choice Montessori school for the entire district under DSEG, it didn't talk about proximity because it was open to the whole parish. But for J. Wallace James, there are federal court pleadings that specifically discuss proximity priority for J. Wallace James. Mr. Lashley.
So let's vote on J. Wallace James and leave El Leo out.
Well, the motion is to postpone this to a future meeting following the
what
collection
I'm saying,
of data.
it keeps being brought up, and my argument to this policy is El Leo. I mean, if this is specific or would work specific for J. Wallace, and there's language in there towards J. Wallace, then put J. Wallace on the agenda and let's vote on it.
If there are no further questions or comments, then I will call for the vote on the substitute motion to postpone.
Six for, two against.
All right, the next item on our agenda is executive session. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss. Okay, Mr. Angel, second by Mr. Lashley. Okay, all in favor of going into executive session? All right, any opposed? All right, thank you. We are now in executive session.
No, that's a gap. Put a me. You working on my 3.5 million. I need some additional. Halfway there. That's why I put the extra money in case y'all have. Halfway there before I came back anyway. Well, it started with $500,000, but I mean, while we at, I'm just upping it every time I see it.
I make a motion that we go back into regular session.
Aye. Madam President.
Fellow board members. All right, we're back in regular session.
Is it 4.2 or 4.3?
The 4.2 and 4.3, just combine them and make one
Okay.
motion.
Madam President, I move to accept council's recommendations on executive session items number 4.2 and 4.3.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then that concludes the meeting, and if there are no further comments from members of the board, I'll adjourn. All right, adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everyone.